Good morning. It's just after 5 a.m. We're here in Calgary, where I am anyway. And today I'd like to do a breathing practice with you. Where we are, the temperature's going down, and we've got that crackly, crunchy snow covered on the deck and on the sidewalk. So we're just going to do a little gentle practice here and start with our block underneath our hips, and you can either do it on the low level or the medium level, or depending on where you're at the day, you can go on the high level. I'm going to start on the medium level, but you choose where you want to be. And just choose for what your body is asking for. Yeah. And settle into your inhale and your exhale. With the temperatures really just starting to drop and that snow underfoot, like there's this natural slowing down that's happening. So we'll do some movement today, but let's begin with some breath, and we'll infuse a real focus specifically on our breathing as we go. So feel how your breath is at this moment in time. Notice the quality, so how it feels in terms of it being full or empty or held or thin or full or soft, or maybe you feel it in through the nose. Maybe you feel your belly moving. Maybe you feel your ribcage moving. Maybe you don't feel anything at all. Just notice whatever is there or not there. Okay, so now we're going to take the block away. Now I'm going to use the block for the next one, but you can also use a bolster or just do it on the floor. We're going to do Badakanasana. So the feet are going to come together. So you can have them on the floor. You can have your legs over a bolster, or you can have them on a bolster, or I'm just going to use, like I said, this block. Just like so. Now, the distinction here, if you've got some osteoarthritis or some hip stuff, then having your feet on the block and the legs moving wide might not feel good. So having support underneath your legs with a bolster might be better. That's as an example. Same if you've got some bursitis or some SI stuff, because when your legs are up on the block, there's a greater opportunity for your leg bones to move in your hip socket. So you've got to determine if that amount of movement, or if that resting point, some people call it the shape, is appropriate, right? So use the bolster, or just take your feet onto the floor. Do what makes sense for you based off of what you're noticing in your body. And then again, just come into your breathing. Now the great focus on breath this morning is that you'll notice if your breathing starts to get ratchety now, or hard or heavy, or something kind of showing you that you're working too hard, then choose an easier position. Choose an easier movement. Even if your brain is saying, oh, don't be silly, just be where you are, you can do it, you've got the range. Come back to the quality and the sensation of your body, right? Because the quality and the sensation of your body is the language of your body. And I know that it can be difficult to discern at times, but if you spend time with it, then there'll be less conflict with what your brain says. You'll see them as very distinct elements. All right, lovely. So a couple more breaths wherever you're at. And then bring your legs up. And let's come into a sitting position. And we're going to do a couple of side bends. So if you don't want to use a block, you don't have to. I'm not going to make you, because I can't on this side of the screen. But the idea is when you're on a block or even on something higher, like again, if you're someone with an OA or a hip, like a rheumatoid arthritis in your hip, or there could be some structural stuff, but there could also simply be some feeling of limitation. And being here, you're like here, or you're having to really reach up here, or you're just forcing yourself to be here because I'm here. Then come onto a chair, yeah, or come up onto a bolster, come up a bit higher. Because the position, it's like hardly anyone can sit, honestly. And so to have yourself at least up on a height makes it much easier through your legs and your pelvis and your spine, okay? All right, so you decide where to go, and then watch me here. We're gonna go over a beach ball. And this time, I mean, you've seen me do this before, but this time I want you to think about breathing without increasing the volume. Breathe into the side of your ribs. So right where your hand is here. If you want to put your hand here. And the reason why I say try not to increase your volume of breath is anybody can make their ribs move if they increase the volume. Like if they breathe deeper. And I want you to keep the volume that you've got so you can really get a feel for your breath. Again, here comes that word feeling again, right? The subjective quality of your breathing. Okay, we're going to come back over this way. This time you'll feel how your weight shifts over to the sitting bone. So the weight's going to come out of this opposing sitting bone, but allow yourself to still feel it against whatever you are sitting on. Yeah? So you're not coming right off of it. You're not creating space or air between the sitting bone and the block. Okay, good. And now let's come over. So still contact with the pelvis, and do your best to make it straight to the side. Because sometimes when we're limited, and lots of people are limited through the side bend, is that you might want to twist, or you might want to forward bend, or even back bend. So notice that you're going straight in through that plane. I find one of the impacts of sitting a lot on the floor, which is what I do a lot of when I'm teaching with Zoom, is my side bends can get a lot more limited. So I've incorporated more to kind of keep that supple, and I'm changing up how I am in front of my computer. So I've got 3 different heights now: standing, sitting in a chair, sitting on the floor. Yeah, and a variety of different bolsters and props for when I am sitting. Good. Okay, now you've got your pelvis here. Yeah, so feel where your pelvis is. I'll bring this guy over here. Feel where your pelvis is. Okay, now you got sitting bones, which we refer to. You've got the coccyx, which is the back part of the bottom part of your spine. Lots of people refer to it as your tailbone. And then you've got your pubic bone in the front. Okay, I'm going to come up to the screen for a sec. Okay, so you can see this is a female pelvic floor, and you'll see that it's essentially a diamond, right? So if you put your index fingers together, that's the pubic bone. If you put your thumb tips together, that's your coccyx. And then where your thumb to your finger are is where your sitting bones are. Okay, so the orifices lie along the midline, right? 2 or 3 of them. And then you've got this diamond, and you've got the muscle tissue that's all in there, right? All right, so now what I want you to feel, whether you're sitting on the floor or on the block or on the chair or on the bolster, or maybe you're standing, maybe you're lying down, wherever you are, I want you to feel that diamond. And maybe you need to feel it in your mind's eye, but see if you can get a sense. If you need to place your hands in your pelvis, do that. Get a sense of where those pieces are, and then can you sense into where those orifices are? And now imagine that you can breathe through those orifices. It might sound kind of crazy, But when I have taught this to people, their level of groundedness has increased, their level of anxiety decreases, their mental and emotional state steadies out. And right now, where there's just this growing fatigue of stuff in and around our world, it could be a really useful tool for you. So think about allowing that breath to drop. I actually recently did a podcast on the pelvic floor and did a longer orifice breathing section in that. So we'll put a link to that podcast that you can listen to. So allow that breath to come into the pelvic floor. So you're not forcing the breath or pushing your pelvic floor out. It's just imagining that breath is there, and then as you exhale, it's almost like you're feeling I don't want to impose a feeling on you. So I'd rather simply say, notice any sort of change or newness in sensation as you bring your breath and your pelvic floor in your mind's eye. Okay, now maintain that orifice breathing, and now come to your side. Now you're probably going to move less. Move only as far as you feel you're breathing in your pelvic floor. So you can see how I've moved less, right? So stay in contact. And sometimes what you'll find is that your voice changes. And I'm not sure if you've noticed that with me or not. I mean, it's still early in the morning for me, so my voice has still got that morning twang to it. Breathing in through that pelvic floor. And then coming back up. Okay, so now if you want to be more specific, sometimes coming into the anal orifice can be easier because it's a bigger and there's more muscle around it, and so we tend to feel it more. That's the tendency. So if you want to imagine just the anal orifice and breathing there. Okay, now fingers come in behind you. You're going to interlace them. Good. Same thing. Feel through that anal orifice. Breathe through the anal orifice. People tell me that when they breathe through their pelvic floor, when they play baseball, they hit the ball further. I've had people tell me that they'll notice an argument starting to arise with a spouse, and they breathe through their pelvic floor, and the emotion simmers down. People run faster and with more ease when they breathe through their pelvic floor. Back pain dissipates. Okay, now come forward and see if you can feel the orifice is more in the front. Okay, now let's take a twist as you do that. So feel that and then start to take a twist. But only twist as far as you feel that pelvic floor and your breath there. Now what I'm about to say might sound a little bit jocular and it's geared more towards the men. But guys, a male friend of mine years ago said to me, you've got to say this to the men. So you know what I'm about to say, don't you? Yeah? Is I want you to breathe through your balls. Yeah, I just said that. I know, it sounds a bit crazy, but see if you can bring that awareness there for you. And the reason why this male friend of mine told this to me, because he had come back from a physio appointment. He was in his late 30s, and he's like, finally someone just said it, because now my back pain's gone. So I think a lot of times we avoid talking about these things, right? But I just said it. So kind of play with that. I remember the first time I shared that with somebody, with a guy, and his back pain just vanished, like vanished. So that might be something useful for you. Okay, so now come back here. So now still maintain the contact with your pelvic floor. Good. Whatever orifice or area of your pelvic floor you're staying in contact with, now maintain that. Now let's bring the shoulders into it. Shoulders come up and then pull your shoulder blades back. But see, like you're going to probably want to go a lot further. And it's not that you shouldn't do that. It's just that the focus I'm bringing you to is to your breath and your breath into your pelvic floor. So maintain the awareness there and move your shoulder girdle. Okay, now I'm going to slow it down even more so that I'm moving my shoulders as I inhale and then as I exhale. I find that as someone who can move very, very fast, I can be quite nimble and agile in many aspects of my life and personality, is that when I move slower, I'm much like in training. Then when I come into that fast quality, I'm way more accurate. I'm way more precise. More on purpose. It's a lot smoother, less edgier. Okay, so now let's take a side bend again. You can have the breath into the pelvic floor or not, but just notice what you notice. So I'm noticing I'm going a little further now. I'm still noticing the pelvic floor, the breath in my pelvic floor. I'm noticing a greater smoothness, greater contact with my opposite sitting bone. It really is amazing how fast you can go when you slow down. I think every great philosopher has some line like that. It really is a truth for a lot of us. Okay, good. And then come on back. All right. Now here, bring your hand to bottom of your breastbone, so into your solar plexus area. So your ribs are coming up through here, bottom of the breastbone's here, and the palm of your hand just rests there. And I want you simply to notice yourself breathing. You can keep the pelvic floor there or not, totally up to you. All right, so here's the exercise, and this is a really cool exercise for some, is I want you to take a look at a point, whether on the floor or on the wall or something in front of you that's not moving. And I want you to look at that exclusively and take your focus away from everything else. And notice what happens underneath your hand and in your body. Okay, now look at that same point, but then allow for the outer regions to also be in your vision. So the gaze is a little softer on your focal point, and you're being more inclusive. And notice what that feels like. So narrow the focus now, so you're being exclusive on that point in front of you. And then still be focused, but allow it to be more inclusive. So oftentimes what people report back is something along the lines of this. When they're more exclusive, their eyes get tighter, their breath gets more limited, and they feel a little bit more tight or that kind of tense feeling inside. And then when they're more inclusive, they still have that focus, but there's a more gentleness around the other stuff, and their body is a little more open and their body is a little bit quieter and softer. So think about, particularly, I like teaching this particularly for people who are on the computer a lot and also on your phone. And notice what happens with your focus of your eyes when you're in front of your computer, your tablet, or your phone, and what happens with your eyes. See if you can focus on that today and be aware of how they tighten up. And then do the same activity with your computer or your phone or your tablet, but allow for your gaze to be softer. And see what happens. Notice what happens. All right. You might want to do a bit more of a practice, whether it's something more gentle or more movement or a vinyasa or a weight training or whatever. So if you have the feeling to go and do that, then go for it. And we will see you tomorrow morning. Have a really awesome day. Take good care. Mwah.